Okay, I'm going to take a few minutes to talk about the role of corsets, but understanding the science behind corsets and underlying connective tissue associated conditions that we have to be aware of. Because, like so many answers we give as medical providers, right, it's always, well, maybe, depending on a few certain things. So I'm going to talk about the science behind depends on these different things. So a question that was asked was regarding SI joint stability. SI belts don't seem to be supportive enough, or for some people they're uncomfortable, they just can't find the right fit, which can happen. So the question was about corsets. Can we use corsets to really help reinforce this lumbosacral area, or even up into the thoracic spine as well? And the answer is yes, but let's start from down a little bit lower and then explain why the answer is yes, but. So there are a number of different SI stabilizing tools out there. We have kind of the low profile belts, right? So it's kind of a strap across that goes across the SI itself, so lower part of the back up above the hips. We have, so that was the sacral lock, and I'll tell you it's person dependent, so it's not necessarily that there's a favorite out there. And then you have the Barafine is another one, plenty of other ones out there, but this is just what I have in my office. So Barafine gives you the wraparound support, but you have more in contact with the SI joint, which a lot of people like, the sensory feedback and the pressure on the SI joint itself. And sometimes this can help lock in and stabilize the position of the SI joint. A little different for everybody, but that is an option as well. So another thing is a newer company that came out with compression shorts, so Stoco, and I don't have my shorts with me, but they have tension wire systems built throughout the shorts themselves, and they have pants that you can actually tighten the tension throughout them. And for myself personally, it provides really good feedback into the sacral area and my hips. But that comes at a cost of being extremely difficult to get on with bendy fingers. And also, once on, it's really not recommended for individuals that have vascular issues. In other words, pooling problems, or just sensitivities to vascular compression, because they are quite compressive. But Stoco is another idea out there, as well as just compression shorts in general can sometimes give some good feedback. Okay, but let's move up to the corset question. So if those aren't helping out with SI joint stability, can we move up a little bit higher up into the lumbar spine and even into the thoracolumbar area and the rib cage to get more stability in the SI joint? Yes, and we shouldn't rely on it. So it's like the caveat with all bracing, right? Yeah, absolutely. If you have symptoms and we can't control it, and the rehab process is not as quick as we'd like to see for symptomatic relief, then sure, use what you need to as a tool, but that can't be our main strategy for fixing things, and especially with the corset, because I think it's actually a wonderful idea, but it's so complicated, which is why I like the question. If we're moving up the spine a little bit, we do have some of the Barafine braces that have a little bit more coverage into the lumbar spine. You'll lose a little bit of the SI joint that's locked in, but they do have different braces. Moving up a little bit higher, they make rib binders, and we actually do recommend rib binders for some individuals that have subluxating ribs, this hyperventilation position, which is really what I'm going to spend some time talking about, but it helps to bring the ribs down and in, and it can also help with some stability. But they're elastic, so you get some movement out of them, okay? Now, the reason why that's important, that diaphragm of the rib compression for the pelvic floor, that SI area, is because the respiratory diaphragm works in tandem with the pelvic diaphragm. So they work together. They should be anyway. They work together in function or dysfunction. So when the pelvic when the respiratory diaphragm descends on inhalation, the pelvic floor should actually descend as well, and on exhalation should dome up, and the pelvic floor should dome up as well. And we don't really see that happening that efficiently in those with hypermobile EDS specifically, is what the research is out on. So there has been a recent article that came out just 2025, so this year in April, that, and I'm so sorry, I'm forgetting the last name, but Andrew Maxwell is one of the authors, because it does link the pressure systems in general are all related. So spiky leaky syndrome, and yes, these individuals have hyperventilation patterns, which we have been seeing clinically in those with hypermobile EDS for quite some time. And myself and another clinician have been putting together some research on this idea of the pressure regulation problem. So if we help to stabilize the respiratory diaphragm, that can actually help stabilize the pelvic diaphragm, right? So as a tool, yeah, sure, helping to take that diaphragm out of a hyperventilation position and allow the ribs to come down and like would happen with a corset or a rib binder sounds amazing, right? As a tool, because we know that not only are these individuals stuck in hyperventilation and have pressure pump problems, so the diaphragm is not pumping like it should, it's stuck in this hyperventilation position, and we won't get into the why, but for many different reasons for individuals. And we also know from other research that our inspiratory muscles are not as strong as we see in the general population. Even if we give you exercises to work on the inspiratory muscles, we're not seeing the strength gains that we do. So, and we know that we have biomechanical problems, and we might have some scoliosis, and we might have alignment issues in the spine, and all of these things that we would want to make sure that we have as normal anatomical movement as possible with everything that we do, which includes breathing. And if you have a corset on, you will not be encouraging typical normal breathing patterns that we would like to see, which is why we wouldn't want you to use it all the time as a tool. Now you can argue and say, well, it'll be constantly resisting and I'll build up those intrinsic muscles that are in there for inhalation. Yeah, but you're still not going to be promoting the full biomechanical movement of the rib cage that we need to see with inhalation and exhalation. So, as a tool, yes, it's like spraining an ankle, right? Of course, use a brace when you need it. However, if it is helping you, then we definitely need to work on stabilizing the respiratory diaphragm and the pelvic diaphragm together. So corsets can be helpful, but we don't want to stay in them because we are going to lose the normal biomechanical movement of the rib cage, which most of us have difficulty with anyway. So I know that was a long answer, and I can actually go down 7 different rabbit holes on pressure and diaphragm and all of that, but to understand, it makes sense. Stabilize the respiratory diaphragm, you're going to get some stability down at the pelvic floor. And if you do that, please make sure that you are working with somebody on restoring the biomechanics outside of that brace or the corset, restoring the mechanics of the rib cage, the diaphragm, and even the coordination with the pelvic floor. Okay, so hopefully that was a little bit helpful, but the answer is sure, corsets can actually be wonderful, and we have to make sure that we're addressing the dysfunction at the same time.